This episode of Tekzilla is brought to you by GoDaddy.
Dr. Popular wears many hats: nerdcore rapper, yo-yo champion, and purveyor of fine memes. But today we're going to talk about another one of his specialties, taking awesome photos with your smartphone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
So what are some of your favorite apps?
Well, my favorite camera app for taking photos is actually just the default camera app. It doesn't crash as much as some of the other apps do, which is the most important thing. I also love Hipstamatic, Camera Plus, a lot of iPhone apps, but there's some good Android apps as well that I played with, like PicPlease is a great app.
So why get a smartphone when you can get a pretty decent camera and take regular pictures with that too? Why use a smartphone for taking these kinds of photos?
The best thing about the smartphone for me is that it's always there, it's always in the pocket, so I can just easily carry it around and not have to worry about whether I'm going to be shooting for the day. The best thing is just being able to just pull out your camera and take that shot that you didn't expect was going to happen.
And then you can kind of share it immediately. You don't have to get home and do a lot of photo editing and then upload it to Flickr or whatever. You can just do it instantly.
Absolutely. That was the big appeal for me at first, was actually oversharing everything. It came with Twitter and to Instagram, and then eventually I started really caring about the form and really got into the photography side of things.
What would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're taking photos with their smartphone?
Well, you'll see a lot of low lighting. You'll see people doing the flash, which if at all possible you want to avoid the flash. Try to find creative ways to create light. Like one of my favorite tricks is to take another phone and just hold it near the person's face and take a nighttime shot in a bar. And that's so much better than actually using the flash. But also people tend to maybe move, they don't position. When you're using an iPhone or any mobile phone, you really want to hold as still as you can. And one little trick you can do to that is actually holding closer to your body. You're going to have less wobble that way. So you're going to get a more steady shot. So just things like that, just trying to be a little bit more conscious of the fact that it's not an awesome camera, so you really have to be forgiving with it.
Yeah, the stability is definitely a big one. We actually talk about that a lot just for DSLRs and regular point and shoots, to kind of make a tripod out of your body.
Oh, yeah.
That same thing would work perfectly with a smartphone.
It works great too if you're on the street shooting. Lampposts are awesome. Like any sort of wall, just mount it up against that wall and you'll get that really great steady shot.
How do you know a good potential shot when you see one out in the wild?
That just takes practice, I guess.
Yeah.
There's certain things that tend to just always photograph well, and there's like graffiti is just very colorful and bright and interesting. You don't really have to do much work. It's just a matter of actually taking a lot of shots. Really is probably the best thing you can do. If you take enough shots throughout the day, a few of them are going to turn out phenomenal.
Why are people so obsessed with filters?
Well, filters are actually really addictive. That's how I first got into shooting with the iPhone. And I can tell you they help make an average shot look pretty dope. After a while, though, they actually start to get in your way, and you probably will go back to taking regular shots if you do enough photography. But I got no problem with filters. They're very addictive. It's fun to try out different things. You actually kind of learn about how brightness and contrast can kind of make your shots more interesting, and then you can try figuring out how to do that with natural light as well.
Do you think people use them as a crutch more than anything sometimes?
Some people do. I mean, I actually think some people could actually benefit from using them. Sometimes there's a boring food shot, maybe a filter. I mean, I actually love seeing food shots, and maybe a little filter isn't too bad, but a lot of people probably do too much of the filter, just like here's a bubblegum wrapper shot in Hipstamatic. That's not really that interesting.
It's artsy. Kind of artsy. So what are some of your favorite apps?
My favorite apps are the regular camera app. Hipstamatic is actually something I've come back around to liking a lot, but Camera Plus is by far the most used camera app that I use. It's got this amazing ability to clarify an image, and I don't know exactly how it works. It's probably some mix of true HDR, and some other effects, but it does edge detection, it does all this work. So basically, if you take a shot and things just aren't really popping, you turn on the clarity filter and it just really seems to come alive.
And True HDR is one that you almost mentioned, but that's a great app as well.
Well, True HDR is great for outdoor shots of buildings. There's always that shot where, it's a beautiful sky and there's a statue and you have to choose which one with the regular camera app. But if you use an HDR app, which the iPhone does come with built-in HDR, but it's really not that great. I highly recommend any HDR app. True HDR is what I use. And that way you can get the clouds and the foreground and be able to get some interesting combinations. Now this is another one of those things that sometimes people overuse. They go for these over dramatic HDR effects, which isn't killer. But if you learn to subtly use it, it's a great effect.
And Instagram is one that I've been following you on a long time.
Yeah.
That's a great app.
Yes, I love Instagram.
But the filters, I am a little bit tired of the filters. It's nice to see some new apps with some different takes on the filters. I like Magic Hour, for example. I've been using that one a lot.
Now, do you think you would have gotten into Instagram without the filters?
I don't think so. I think it was really the filters that kind of drew my attention, and then I started thinking more about how to actually compose decent shots and not rely on the filters as much, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me, and eventually I just kind of dropped the filters altogether. Actually, one tip for Instagram is I highly recommend, if you are doing filters, to do them outside of the app, because Instagram only saves at 612, right? So if you do get that shot that you love, there's nothing really you can do with it. You can't even really put it on your blog unless you have a tiny blog. So, you know, using Camera Plus for your filters if you need a filter, and then importing into Instagram is going to be a much better end result.
What about Pic Please for Android? Is that a good one too?
Yeah, that's we hear from a lot of people on our photo walks that do Android that Pic Please is probably the best game out there. I believe it's sharing as well as filters, very similar to Instagram.
And so that's across the board though. That's on Android and that's on iOS as well. So you can kind of use it on both platforms, or is it just Android?
You know, that's a good question.
I think it's on both.
I only hear from our Android users.
Oh no, you're right. It's just on Android.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it's kind of like the Instagram answer for Android right now, because there isn't Instagram for Android.
Yes, yes.
Someday they'll get there. So what is some of the stuff that you're working on other than just taking great photos right now?
You know, photography has really been the main thing for me right now. I'm working with Sincerely. I'm doing these photo walks. So I'm going to New York, I'm going to Seattle, trying to get all sorts of videos together on how to take better shots and how to use apps. My daily app experiments, like everything I'm doing is pretty much at the moment photography based with the mobile phone. And
then you have Postagram too.
Yes.
That's a cool project.
Yeah, the Postagrams are, these are postcards you can send from your iPhone, and these are great. It's a great way, because I was into zine culture before I was into like music or photography or anything.
Yeah.
And it's so cool to be able to take my current hobby and turn it back into this do-it-yourself you know, physical thing that you can actually mail to people.
Yeah, these are great, and these actually then pop out of their little card, and you can just have them like a tiny handheld Instagram photo.
Yeah.
It's very cool. And you're also doing stuff with App Judgment now, I hear.
Yeah, so App Judgment and I are doing camera reviews or camera app reviews, and it'll be maybe once a month. We'll do a new kind of tips and tricks and kind of should you get it or shouldn't you segment.
Very cool. Well, where can everyone find your work online?
DocPop.org.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. All right, we'd like to thank Doc Pop, of course, for taking the time to be here on the show, and there's more Tekzilla coming right up, but before we do that, it's time to thank one of our sponsors, GoDaddy.com. Keep your personal information away from spammers, hackers, and your crazy ex-roommate. Use private domain registration from GoDaddy.com, which protects your privacy by keeping your address, phone number, and more out of the public database. Plus, you can download GoDaddy's free iPhone, Android, or BlackBerry app to order right from your phone, manage your current domains, and more. And if you use the code TEK11, you'll receive 15% off any order of $75 or more. Check out revision3.com/GoDaddy for a list of all the amazing GoDaddy deals from Revision 3.